As you said, I am Neal Shebeck, and I'm a coordinator for Clark County School District in Las Vegas, Nevada. And with me today is Brian Lenze, and he's just been recently hired as or switched jobs to where he's now a trainer and facilitator that can go out to departments and schools in our district to help train both with Canvas as well as Google. And so we'll be talking about that. First off, a little background so you know where we're coming from when we're talking about the need for alternative uses for Canvas courses. We are the 5th largest school district in the nation, and you can see by the numbers on there, we have a lot of schools, a lot of students. We have about 44 to 45,000 employees. And we currently use an enterprise email system called Interact, and it's finally probably going away. And one of the benefits of Interact, though, which really has pushed us to do this, is that a conferencing piece of it. You can have multiple people, like all the people of a single school, involved in a conference, and they have access to email, messaging from the principal and sharing of resources. So it's both information dissemination as well as resource, as well as being able to communicate from teacher to teacher, et cetera. But also our departments use that because we probably have about 80 departments, and they need to communicate out to the teachers and make resources available as well. And so we have hundreds of Interact conferences, and when that goes away, even though our district has recently gone to Google as well for all but 11 of our 364 schools so far, it does not provide a really good one-stop shop for that conferencing piece. So when I say conference during our presentation, that's what I'm talking about, is replacing that. And so there is still a big need for information dissemination in our district and collaboration, because communication is one of our big things to work on because we're so large. And so so this summer, a big part of that is that we've been working towards getting our departments on board with using a Canvas course to be able to share those resources instead of using Interact. So in order to do that, we need to provide a lot of training and consultation, because those departments, by and large, don't have a lot of Canvas experience. And so that's one reason why I'm going to introduce Brian and have him step up here now.
Morning. All right, so as you said, I'm here to help facilitate this transition from an Interact conference and then using using Google and Canvas, because we feel Canvas will be a great home for all of this information. And so getting everyone on board to see that vision and how Canvas can be used beyond a classroom is the main focus of my job. And so when we're looking at the plan, we have like a multi-pronged approach, because we also want to increase the usage of Canvas in the classroom. And so by having it used throughout the district in multiple ways, teachers will be more comfortable with this, because not only will they be enrolled as students, but then they'll see that departments in the district are using this. So this is going to be one of the main programs that we're supporting and utilizing throughout the district. And so when I meet with each of the departments, and just to give you, like, when I talk about departments, right now I'm focusing in on the curriculum department. So the science or English and literacy, meeting with those different departments because they have a wide range of teachers and staff in the district that they need to meet to send out information and collaborate in some way. And a lot of times it's in unique, different ways. So those are the departments that we're first focusing on. So when we meet, we have 3 things that we want to get across. We want to figure out what are they doing right now and currently with their communication, and how can we accomplish that using Canvas. And then what type of communication do you want fostered? Is it going to be one way, or is it going to be two way? So one way, looking at announcements, and two way using the discussion tools. And then how are we going to get the students enrolled? Trying to reduce the burden of these departments. We're trying to get all these teachers enrolled into the different groups can be really cumbersome, especially with the transient rate within our district because there are so many choices, as we just heard. A lot of times teachers tend to move a lot from school to school to school. So trying to reduce that so that they don't fall through the cracks and miss pertinent information. So that is the big focus of this. And then to meet that, we've come up with a couple different resources to make sure that the communication has a strong pathway for everyone. And one of those things was developing a Canvas course called What is Canvas LMS? And it's set up as a choose your own adventure kind of thing, where they're posed with questions on, hey, what are you trying to accomplish? Do you want to do this? Click here. Do you want to do this? Click here. And it takes them down to a path and narrows down till they get to a set template that we have. Like you're looking for a site conference, or you are looking for a departmental conference. And then that way we have a template set up for them that they're able to start putting in the information. And we'll take a look at some of those templates in a minute. And then the other part of that leads right into what are the templates that we have set up. Well, we have a site conference. So when I say site, I'm talking about a specific school. So they're going to have different needs than a department. So we have a template set up for what the majority of our sites would have to give them a good starting point. What the departments could use, give them that frame. And then also we have site-based collaboration time where teachers are getting their professional development at their site on a weekly basis. And so this would give them a spot where they could hold all of those resources together so their admin can see who's attending, what's going on, and what's being learned. And then we also have workshops for PD. So if you wanted to offer outside of your site but district-wide, here's like a workshop that you can put together. So what I want to do now is actually show you some of the things that we're doing. So the first thing we wanted to do is make sure that there was an easy place to access all of this instead of having to share links or all of that. That can get kind of confusing. So we wanted a one-stop shop for all of these places. And so what we came up with was the CCSD Hub. And we created a little icon, and it's on the global nav, and it's there for every school employee once they log into Canvas. So when they get there, they will see this course.
All right, so here we are.
So this is the hub. So as you can see on the left in the global nav, there's the CCSD Hub. When they click into this, this is the home page for this course. They have three options: the conferencing, which is set up for our informational conferences, the professional learning communities, and then anything that the department is running that is separate from their departmental information. So if they were running a special program and they needed a conference for that, they could create it and put it in there. So all the different Interact conferences could eventually be housed in there. And then we have the Learning Network. The Learning Network is going to be filled with channels where we have professional development. And so when you click into the Learning channel, the Learning Network, you'll see all the list of channels there. The first one that's up there is our CCSD Blend Ed. This is our initiative to increase quality blended education throughout the district. So they'd be able to come here to learn about what training's available for becoming a blended teacher, what pedagogical stuff, or pedagogy, that's how you pronounce it. So you can go in there and find all those different resources and trainings that are available. The Canvas channel, to give you an example of what one of those looks like, is a repository of a lot of different resources that we have set up to help a teacher become more familiar with Canvas and utilizing Canvas. One of the things, once it loads, that you'll see is a Canvas 101 course that we set up, which is just like a Canvas basics kind of training. Some of the other cool things that it links out to separate other courses. So we want to make sure that we have a low cognitive load for all the students. So what we've created is a image toolbox course that's separate that they can link to, that it's all that's turned on in the course navigation is files, and teachers can pull down the stock photos that are available to them, all the icons that we use, so they can help keep that familiar feel for all their students. That way they don't have 20 different courses to look through. All right. The other thing that we have put in here is increasing the interactives that can easily be embedded in Canvas pages, because that's where a lot of teachers, that tends to be one of the last places they get to. So we wanted to put something up front. So this is like, how do you embed Edpuzzle? How do you embed Quizlet, Padlet, so they can start making their pages a little more interactive for their students. So that was what we have housed in our Learning Network channel for Canvas. All right, and then back up at the hub, the last choice that's there for them is their departments. And so this would be where we would have the conferences for the departments, that they would be able to disseminate information. They can put their about us. And then once we start meet with them, we got their plan. We want to make sure that they get a template. And so we set up a shell and then filled it with the information that they would need to begin with. And so what we have done with our templates is we always want to make sure that we give them some sort of starting point. And so that modify icon will link to a Google Doc that is a checklist of what they need to modify in the course to have it ready for their audience. So this way they can get a starting point, and then we know that they've at least visited every page if they've gone through that checklist, so they can customize it to their needs. And then the other thing that we've learned from our templates is we've removed some of the lorem ipsum text filler and tried to put in the why we do things the way we do. So if you look under the welcome setting, we have a header 2. So we explain this was used with a header 2. Why do we use a header 2 here? Why do we use a header 3 down below? And you get a bigger buy-in and a more cohesive look across the department, and they don't tend to change as much, because we want that consistent feel for all the end users, not just necessarily your own department. And when you explain the why, there tends to be a higher buy-in. The other thing we have down here would be the different resources to go to, so they can click. Some of those resources can click to a different Canvas course or a different page. They may link to a Google Doc. The doc could be embedded on the page, Drive, all those different options. The calendar, we show them how to embed a Google Calendar, and then we even link the how-to. So we can say, hey, here's an example of a calendar layer on the page. This would be how you do it. And so we can link to that. So they get all that information, why we're doing it and how we do it. From there, one of the unique things, so we talked about enrollment. The first thing that we do is we set the course to institution, allow them to enroll. We get the end code with the URL. That goes on to the course. Then they can click the right link to join the course. But then we have departments that cover from K to 12, but they may only want to message the teachers that are their middle schools, grades 6 to 8. And we don't want to make sure that they send out announcements to everyone, because we don't want them to become tone deaf, the teachers to become tone deaf to their messages. You know, if you get a string of like 4 messages that are to K5 and I'm a high school teacher, I'm going to just start ignoring your name, because you're not sending any information that's pertinent to me. This is really annoying. So we set up a redirect tool, called it Groups, that takes them to the Groups page under People. So we hide People so they can't click there. This redirect takes them to the Groups, and this is what it would look like if you were a student. You can join all the different groups, so you can allow self-enroll. So now they don't have to worry about when a teacher moves. Did I move up to high school? Did I move down to middle school? Am I now teaching K5? Those teachers can join and leave as they need on their own. So that way, you're not hiding any information. So if someone's curious, well, what are they doing at the high school level? Let me take a look. If I'm 8th grade, are they doing anything cool in 9th grade that I need to be aware of to prepare my kids? I can join that group, get the information, and then leave. So I'm not bombarded with a ton of announcements. I can go in and out as needed. And then the last template that we have would be for the schools. So it's going to have a similar feel. We have the setup, how do you modify, the why we do things. We talk about some of the special coding that we've done on the back end so that their Canvas would look a little different. Why did the global nav change to my school colors? That's something that we did on the back end to help provide a little personal feel for each of the individual sites. They have the different icons down here for all the different things they may want to use. If you click into modules, you'll see a list. So like the calendars, a lot of times schools need to know what computer lab is available. So they can embed a Google layer so the teachers can see what period I can go to take my kids to the computer lab, what are news events like open houses, things like that. The different committees that are at the school, they can join inside those as groups or just have separate committee pages. The PLCs that individual schools have. So we have district-wide PLCs, and then we also have school-level PLCs. So we'd want to try to keep those separate in that conferences, we want the district-wide PLCs, and then the site-level PLCs we'd keep housed at the site-level courses to help narrow down that confusion. And with that, I'm going to turn it back to Neil.
Quick question.
Yes.
So when teachers join the groups, are you presenting them yours? So who's through that link? How do they get in? Or do you just open it up to the whole institution?
All right, so the question was, when we present them with the group, do we give them the group code or do we just open it all up? When you set up the group, we had to set up several group sets so that they could join multiple groups. And there's only one group inside that group set, and it's set to self-enroll. So then you're just done. So then at that point, they can join and leave as they want. That way, if a teacher feels like I'm getting information that I shouldn't get, the instruction would be, we'll just leave that group. All right, and then at the course level, they would still be able to make global announcements. Like for science, if they were launching a PRISM program that's K-12, they could make it on that course level, not the group level, and then every teacher would get that, not just that group.
All right, excellent. So that was our plan of attack. So now the outcomes. So what have we been working on? And we've alluded to that where this summer we've been pushing Brian and Mike from Canvas out to departments to work with them with our templates to try to start building a repository of resources for their teachers this fall. And at the school level, some of the different alternative courses would be the site conferences we've mentioned. Right now, since Interact is still around, schools aren't interested in trying something new. It should not be surprising. Because until you have to, you're not going to look for the lifeboat until Titanic is actually sinking. And so once the actual date is set for Interact to go away, that's going to help us in providing a lifeboat for people. And what we've done ahead of time is every single school already has a site conference course in Canvas, and they just don't probably know it. And it has a single page in it, actually two, has a home page that says, hey, this could be your site conference. Go to Canvas Commons and import the template to get started, or contact us for help. And then the other page that's in that course is a page that lists out the different features in Canvas that makes it a really good fit for conferencing. So I have screenshots of like the discussions, the announcements, module view, different things like that, and how well that would work for a conferencing type course in Canvas. Other outcomes at the school level would be PLCs. Sports, we've had some different sporting teams just naturally start using Canvas courses to work with their athletes, and then after school clubs. But our big push this summer is with the district level, mostly three flavors, the ones listed up there, onboarding and training. We have a lot of departments that have one or two people at every single school. And as mentioned earlier, we have over 360 schools. So those departments don't have a ton of people to be going out and doing onboarding training because, once again, we have a lot of shifting of jobs in our district. And my wife is over Title I Hope, which is our homeless program, and she had that exact issue. And she's listed down there because she has a Canvas course for resources and a Canvas course for onboarding and training. But early childhood has that similar situation. Transportation is constantly training new people. But even though my wife works for one of these departments. It took a while before she was willing to put in the initial time to set that up, even though she's very happy she did so now. But she would come home and go, oh, you know, this onboarding and getting people out to all these different schools, it takes so much time. It's like, well, how about a Canvas course? No, I don't have time for that. And about after the third or fourth month of that, she's like, okay, show me something about this. And she had a project facilitator that was tech savvy that she could task to do that. And even though they spent maybe 50 to 60 hours setting up these 2 courses, in the first quarter of the year, it saved approximately 300 hours for them. And so it was really a great example, and some of the feedback they got, because they put an embedded Google form at the end of it, was that even though their target audience wasn't always super technical, they preferred having that when I need it training available rather than the one-on-one with somebody coming out, because then they had to plan and be available during that specific time. So it's been a really good result. And now they've had about 800 or 900 people go through the training, and it was just set up last year. So. Resources and information, there's several, like our curriculum departments that Brian mentioned. That's a big push for them for that type of a Canvas conference course. And then PLCs, like we set one up for Canvas. We want people that are using Canvas in our district to be able to join a course and be able to be a part of a conversation or bring up best practice questions and be able to communicate with each other. And so we've set up one for G Suite for Education. We've set up one for Canvas. And we've set up one for the district developed content that we've made. The people, the designers, which Brian was the science designer previously, they have a PLC course that teachers that are using our created content can join and then be able to have the ear of the designer that made the content. So if they have a question about it, who better to answer that question or a suggestion, or even to communicate with each other about, oh, this is how I'm using it in my classroom. All right, so. But this is not an overnight thing. Obviously, you need to have somebody helping them get started, because it's an iterative amount of changes to get from what you initially receive from some of the departments, which is awkward a little bit sometimes. Like if they'll have a series of a video embedded on pages and just text that says, watch this video. And that's the only thing on the Canvas page. So you obviously need to meet with the departments or the people that are going to be putting this together to get it to look in a way that's going to be inviting to the end user. And I think the more that they're able to be a student in some well-made Canvas courses, the better their design is going to be. Because even if they can't do it, they know that this doesn't look how I would want it to look. How can I improve that? So let's look at... All right, so I have to end the show in order to make this work? Okay. Okay. All right, so here is an example of what a site conference might look like. So obviously, we don't have a high school named any high school. So this is just each one of our templates, we try to have a link to an example that's built from the template. And technically, behind the scenes, we make the example and then make the template based on the example, but they don't need to know that. So we have different buttons. A lot of schools, they want access to calendars. And so the calendar button, and I saw how slow the internet was, so I'm going to make my clicking a minimum today. So luckily I have open tabs. If you click on the calendar one, it takes you to the modules view and a couple different pages that have embedded Google calendars. Because the schools are going to want a main calendar, they're going to want a SPED calendar, they're going to want a computer lab checkout calendar. They have multiple reasons for that. Discussions, that's a big piece that Interact, our current online or email system, provides in their conferencing, is the ability for the administrators as well as the teachers to be able to communicate. And so that's important in there. And then naming it with the school year at the end so you can close out those older discussions and make way for new ones and be able to archive stuff is important. The committees takes you to in the modules view where they have an embedded, in this example, they have an embedded Google form for the beginning of the year. Teachers need to select what committees they're going to serve on and stuff like that. So I looked at several current Interact conferences and tried to recreate that in such a way that it was a little better in Canvas and was not so different that they would have a huge learning curve on how to start using it. All right, the Title I Hope training/resource course that I mentioned. So this one, it has to explain, it has to train people up on what rights the students that are earmarked as homeless have under the McKinney-Vento Act. And so there's a short video that they had made that's embedded on the home page, and then this one's available to anyone in the district. And the reason that it was built was 2 courses, because if you click training, it just goes to modules on the first page of the training, and you just go next, next, next through it, and it's sit and get, just information on this is what you need to know. To find out more, contact, the Title I department type of thing. And at the end of it is that embedded Google survey I mentioned to, show that they finished the training, because that's part of what they need to do. When they get observed, they need to make sure that whoever the liaison at each school has gone through the training. If you click on the resources, though, it opens in a new tab, and actually it looks very similar. So the end user won't know they've left and gone to a different course, but it's technically a different course because they wanted part of it to be not have to log into Canvas. So that the setting, instead of institution, is set to public. But part of it, they wanted it to be behind a slightly locked door to where you at least have to have a CCSD Canvas login. And so that's why there's 2 courses, so they could kind of have it both ways without a problem. All right. This is the Google conference. And we made 2 courses for Google to support our Google initiative as well. One, we wanted to, just like on the Title I Hope version, people that are using only Google Classroom, kind of the gateway drug to Canvas, right? They are starting off in that, and they don't want to, if they want to find out more about Google, they're not going to want to log into Canvas, even though what we've set up for login is the same login as it's their AD login for their computers on their network. So it's not something that they need to know that's new. But in order just to get information about G Suite, we didn't want them to have to, log in on top of that, because that would be, potentially a negative, feeling for them. But if they, and it's mentioned in the notes and on the home page, if they click on the PLCs one, which I will chance that and click on that, unable to connect. Awesome. If they were to click on the PLC button and the internet was working better in here, it would open up in a separate tab that course, and it would make them log in at that point. Because in the PLC, you need communication. If you have communication needs, then you need them to be enrolled as a student in order to participate. So under the PLC one, there's an extra couple of FAQ pages for what we're calling the Google controllers at each site, because they're the admin, Google admin at each site, and so they need some information. And then there's FAQ page here, which is just a listing of questions that we've come up with, divided by topic in Google, like Google Drive and Google Classroom, et cetera. And then a button that goes to the answers for those questions. Under resources, it takes you to the modules view, and it has just pages of resources, which luckily for the Google one and for Canvas, they make their own resources. Their how-tos are really good. You can just link out to those types of things. But this shows a good district-wide example of an alternative Canvas course. We did the science one for a PLC, since I've got Brian here, who was the science designer. And this is what I was talking about, where if I'm using the Science 6 curriculum that our department made, and I'm teaching with it, I'm going to need some assistance, right? And any of these buttons you click on takes you to a specific individualized page of resources that if I'm teaching Science 6, here's how that works. Here's some of the different things that I might need to get started. Here's some of the trainings that might be available to help me improve myself. And the training resources button at the bottom of this is if our designers are going out to schools sometimes when invited, and they're able to log into this PLC, click the training resources button, and it opens up a demo version of a science course, and they can start showing really how to get started and how to go through this. And then under support, they wanted it immediately available. If you have an issue with some of our content, you can put it in this embedded Google form and be able to submit that, and it goes straight to the designer in question that made the content. So it ends up being a direct line of communication for when you're trying to support thousands of teachers. I think we have around 18 to 20,000 teachers. And obviously not all of them are using our content yet, but hopefully that will increase over time. But in order to communicate to all those, you can't train all of those very easily without having some online assistance. The last example I wanted to show is a department one. So this is our summer push, and so it should look fairly similar or fairly familiar to you compared to the template that Brian was showing you. And this is for our department, because we can't really tell other departments, hey, you should do this in Canvas without our department doing it first. And so our first example is showing just the online and blended learning department's Canvas course. Now, we don't have the need for ours to have a PLC. If people want to reach us, they usually email us, and we don't have people needing to communicate. And if they are, it's in the Canvas conference or the Google conference. It's not here, so it's in the things that we support. So this is more about us, about the Blend Ed initiative, about how to find training, and the Canvas and Google ones tell really basic information about what Google is, what Canvas is, what it can do for you, and where to find out more, where to go next. The links at the bottom, which was Brian's idea, very good one, would take you, like the Canvas logo would take you to the Canvas channel within the learning network that he was showing earlier. And so all of those buttons can link you to a whole bunch of more resources about any one of those that we support, because we support all of those programs. All right. Okay, so we're here. This is the beginning of the conference. We love talking about Canvas. We consume food, so we will be around during lunches and dinners. We'll both be going to Hack Night, yes, and so we'll both be there. And so if you want to talk to us about any of these things, we also, I think, have business cards somewhere around here. Our emails are fairly simple. They're up there. Mine's a little simpler because I'm the Google admin, so I grabbed an alias. But do you have any questions for us now? Because if not, you can find us later as well. Yes?
Did you have this content available to all of us? We didn't start investing in so I didn't know
Okay.
how to share your content.
Okay, so the question was, do we have this content available to us outside of right now? Our PowerPoint, no. But our templates, several of our templates are in Canvas Commons, the public one. If you search for, I think, my name, Neal Shebeck, you should be able to find about 3 or 4 of our templates. Yes?
You mentioned that you've got 80 or a lot of departments that are involved with this. Do you include your support staff as well as part of this? Is there more professional right now? It's not just teachers, but those that support us in the classroom, they use this content.
Good. So the question was, do we include support staff in our online support and with all the departments? And yes, every employee in the district gets a Canvas account and gets access to that learning network through the CCSD Hub. And like transportation, all I deal with is support staff, that entire department. And so, yes. Question back there?
The amount of facilitation that takes place, do you have a metric for that for each type of modality that you deploy?
So the question was the amount of
Facilitation?
facilitation that we're having to support this?
Yeah, to do prior learning communities, for example, I guess the trainings is more department centered. So specifically prior learning communities and the discussion boards we have.
So I'll take this. So that's pretty much how the designers and myself, as project facilitators, justify our jobs. And so we want to make sure that part of our job is that support. And so with our Google surveys and how much feedback we're getting, we use that as data to show that, hey, this is actually working. The PLCs, what's really great about them, especially for content, is you might have one brave soul in a middle school that's like, I really want to do this with my 7th graders, but no one else is doing it with me. I'm really scared. Well, here's a community. Here's every other middle school that's using it. Reach out, hey, 7th grade science teachers, what are you doing? So we help facilitate those. It's kind of part of our job description. So because we have those individual jobs, I think that's really how we're facilitating or monitoring the...
I'm looking for like a time, because we're a small team, we've talked about prioritizing communities, but we're like 3 people for an entire university. And so one of the challenges for PLCs for us is the amount of facilitation, because we do the training and we do the support, and it's just 3 of us.
Not sure if we have an exact measurement of time spent on it, because this has been a build-up of a period of years at this point, and because we've had Canvas for 4 years, 4.5 years now, and it's in response to requests for help. We do reach out to departments, but schools, the way ours is organized, they kind of need to reach out to us. We just have to make ourselves available.
Okay.
Yeah. Question?
Thank you. So very creative use of platform. So my question is, what was your methodology in trying to determine what resources should go inside of a course in a page, right, or a group of pages, as opposed to putting content in other courses that you link out to, right? So like where you say, well, this is appropriate for a page here in this course, but this group of resources actually belongs in the course unto itself.
So the question is how do we decide where to put the resources, either on a page or in a different course? And it comes down to 2 things. How do you want your teachers or your end user to access it? And then how does it actually look? So if the resource is really extensive, we don't want them to have to scroll for 30 miles to get to their different resources. So then that might be, okay, how can we group these down into 4 groups to get to those individual pages? Or if this is a really robust resource, it might need its own course. And then if it's just set to a set group of people, again, let's just make that its own course that we can enroll just that small group.
And then
or
there's
if it's district-wide.
An addendum to that would be that if it's something that's going to exist in multiple locations, if we can put it on a Google page, on a Google Doc, and embed that, then we can change it and manage it in one place for multiple courses. So that's a big part of it. Yeah. I think we have time for one more. Yes.
Yeah, so have you explored the account level user groups, and are you utilizing that at all?
We have explored that to a degree, and I thought some schools may want that. We have over 8,000 sub-accounts in our school district, and at the site level for their site sub-account, they may choose to use that, but we haven't pushed it out there because it tends to seem to be better to revolve around a course, and so right now we have not used it. Yeah. All right. Well, thank you all for coming. Like I said, we should have some business cards available, as well as we'll be around. All right. Thank you.